and you could pick anything to build a life in Canada with your family, to return home to Syria, to go back to Zaatari, what would you wish for?
I wish to go back to Syria, but with the new situation.
The library was my space, and there was just so much.
To the harbor grace excursion with the voice to have a time.
We're going to have a lot of fun because I'm going to bring you to my happy place, my most favorite place. And you wouldn't think this of a refugee camp because, you know, we hear all of these things in the news, stereotypes, and I'm going to take you somewhere that, even though it's very difficult to go there yourself because it's a high security camp, what we're doing instead is we brought Za'atari to everybody in Canada. And let me show you first. See, here we go. This is Za'atari camp in the morning. And we would say Sabah al-Khair, which means, you know, good morning. And you would reply Sabah al-Noor. Okay? So Za'atari, my colleague, Mohammed Shwamra, he's here in the back. And then Mohammed's going to be joining on stage. Mohammed's lived in Za'atari since 2013, right, 2013. Okay, this is in Arabic, and anybody read Arabic? Okay, so this says Bismillah, and whenever, if you're Muslim, before you do anything, before you eat, before you go out the door, before any kind of initiative, you always say Bismillah, in the name of God, or we would say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, which means in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. And this is very important because you cannot talk about Za'atari camp, we cannot talk about the culture, this delicious food, without also having some understanding of Islam. Now, the Syrian war, you know, we're so thrilled to be here because not only do we have Ramadan starting next week, but very sadly, it's also the anniversary of the Syrian war coming up. It started in 2011. Many of you probably know, like the Arab Spring, how it started in Tunisia. We go to Egypt, different countries, and Syria. So many people were surprised when Syria, you know, Syrians arose. But here's the kicker. You know, before I left Canada, you know, to become a professor in America, the population of Canada, when I was growing up in Newfoundland, was about 26 million people. And this, the number here stays up there. I think now Canada about 30 million. But just imagine if half of Canada was suddenly displaced. This is what we're talking about in Syria. Syria, Damascus, capital, is the oldest continuously inhabited civilization in history. Just think of the history that's there. The oldest civilization is Mesopotamia, you know, Iraq. And that's important because, you know, Iraq is such a foodie capital as well. So 16 million people. What is very common is that over half the population is displaced internally. Whenever we think about refugees, we always think that it's people who are outside, but just as many people are always stuck inside. So 6 million people in the border countries. Very quickly, I'll tell you. When you can tell that war is coming, anyone who has a lot of money, they're out of there long before it happens. They probably have a house somewhere in the UK, Paris, who knows, something like this, but they're gone, they're out. The people who are left, you know, they're really hoping that the conflict will be over next week, they will go home, and so forth. So they go to the border countries. So if you're in the north, you probably went to Turkey. Turkey took the most Syrian, has the most Syrian refugees. Then, if you're in the west, you probably went to Lebanon, and very shared history, of course, in the whole region. And then in the south, Jordan. And this is why Za'atari camp is in the very north of Jordan. You could almost throw a rock and now hit Syria. We're that close to it. So all the people there. Now, what is also really unfortunate is that they estimate 500,000, 700,000 people have been killed. But frankly, the UN stopped counting in about 2015. We don't know how many. Another thing that's not reported well, you know, on the news is that for every death that is identified, there's probably at least 4 more what we call indirect deaths. So whatever the official number is, probably triple it, and then multiply it again by another 4 or 5. This is just the nature of conflict. I'm going to go through this a bit quickly because the most important part here tonight is for the discussion and questions. But I just really want to set the tone for everyone. Does that sound okay? Good? Awesome. This picture, So when I told you that, about the geography, that most of the people in Zaatari camp, and Zaatari is Arabic for time, are from the south of Syria. And this is so important for our book, because I mentioned the food capitals are like Damascus for what we call baklava or baklava pastries, and then in Aleppo for different types of yummy, savory things. But in the south of Syria, the people in Zaatari are from a region that's called Daraa, D-A-R-A-A, also known as the Harani region. And as we know, all across Canada, depending on where you are, the food is going to be different. So we have recipes in our book that have never been written down or published before. And the ingredients are very different from the rest of Syrian cooking. It is different from Lebanon, different from everywhere else. This photo you see right here, this is from back in about 2013, when people from Syria, from Daraa, were coming into Jordan across the border. This is the reality. You can see the soldiers here in the back. These are Jordanian soldiers who are assisting the refugees with coming across. Because Zaatari camp was never there before. It was just the desert. Just the desert. Now, the people from Daraa, the Haran region, it is a very green, lush area. It reminds me of southwestern Ontario. I went to university in London. It's so beautiful, lots of water, everything there. Now, suddenly, they're here in the desert. And the camp started one night in July when about maybe 30 or 40 people just crossed over the border. The next day, maybe 100 came. The next day, maybe 500. The next day, thousands of people were pouring in. So this is why UNHCR and the UN World Food Program, they then arrive on the location to provide emergency support through shelter and through food rations, things like this. So that is the story of Zaatari. In its heyday, actually, first thing I want to say is a long now big baby, and this means Zaatari. This means welcome to Zaatari. And this is our important coffee ritual. This is Arabic coffee, not Turkish coffee, if you want to talk later about the distinction. Okay? Here we go, Zaatari. All right, it's another photo of the camp here. What is really interesting is that it's the fourth largest city now in Jordan, but we don't know the accurate number. Maybe 1.4 million people have passed through Zaatari camp. In its heyday, it had about 140,000 people living there. People first started living in canvas tents. And then when I arrived in January 2015, they're making the transition to metal caravans. What I tell you, the lifetime of a caravan, what do you think, Mohammed? 6, 7 years maybe, all right? And you have to do lots of repairs on it. Now, the population's been static, about 83,000. What is really of interest is that if you look at the demographics, 2%, 3% are over age 60. Most of the people in the camp are very, very young children. So many children. And also for Zaatari camp, in the first 6 months, 3,000, 4,000 micro businesses were created. And normally it would take any refugee camp about 20 years to reach that pace. Zaatari is what we call a high constraint, high security, low resource environment. You have to have a permit to leave the camp if you're a refugee living there, and there's restrictions on the permit. To enter the camp is very, very difficult. It takes a long time to get a permit, and you have to be working for one of the organizations or someone like myself with the position that I had. Also in Zaatari, there are no books, no bookshops, no libraries. Well, we have some libraries, okay, but they're not like here at the beautiful North York Library, very different. And the internet was turned off for the longest while. Cell service is very weak. So in many ways, it's a low resource environment. This is just some background about the book. We consider Zaatari to be the world's most exclusive restaurant. And the reason for this is that even if you're so lucky enough to be able to get inside Zaatari, you cannot just go to somebody's home. You need to have permits from the security. Again, for this, you would have to be invited by a Syrian family. And all of the workers in the camp, they leave the camp by 3 o'clock each day. And guess what? 3 o'clock is lunchtime. It's the biggest meal of the day. And it's horrendous because you're in the camp, and for me anyway, just like my nose is leading me around the camp. I can identify every dish by the smells. But it's 3 o'clock, you have to leave. You don't get to, maybe enjoy some of this delicious food. So anyway, the book is filled with the recipes, but it's also about stories. Because you cannot Food is the story of life. We were at the CBC earlier today, Mohammed and I was saying, like, food is my love language. Anybody agree with this? Food is your love language, right? So of course, it's food, it's stories, it's poetry, it's art, it's everything here in the book. And this is one of the bread makers in the camp. And this was me when we started the book, and you can see I'm a lot smaller because I ate so much of this delicious food. It's true. This is a lovely quote. Maybe I should get over on this side to read it to you. So this is a Bedouin woman from the camp, and you can tell by her headscarf, okay, and also by the beautiful tattoo that she has on her face. And this would have been done maybe by her mother, or maybe by visiting gypsies, visiting gypsies when she was a young girl. But she said that the people brought to Zaatari many of the old ways of Syria that most had thought were long forgotten, ways of cooking, healing, and especially eking out a living in the barren desert. Remember I told you? People were mostly from the agricultural area. And she added that leaving Syria and surviving the war meant returning to Syria to an older time, refrigerating without modernity, because we don't have electricity and fridges and, GE appliances and stuff. Jury-rigging generators and pumps to stave off the winter freeze and the floods. And of course, using herbs and foods that keep the body healthy and cure afflictions. So we also have a lot of Arab medicine in the book, and every recipe tells you what time of year to make this, what time of day to serve it. So it's going to not only keep you happy, feel loved, but also keep you in optimum health. So what is a cookbook? We think this is a no-brainer, right? I'm sure everyone has a vast collection of cookbooks. Everyone, searches the web for their favorite recipes. When we were told UNHCR, I asked them one day, what do you think we do this cookbook? Because I think there's a really important project here. And they came back and they said, yes, Karen, go do this. So I spoke with some of the women in the camp and I said, what do you think? And they all said, tamam, tamam, which means yes. And they said, yalla, which means let's go, let's do this, hurry, hurry, we want to do this. And then they stopped and they said, Karen, what is a cookbook? What is a cookbook? We didn't have cookbooks in the camp. If you took any book when you left your home fleeing the war, it was the family Quran. And nobody had cookbooks anyway because, why? They learned to cook from their mothers and their grandmothers, right? So none of this had been written down. This is breakfast, by the way, if you're wondering. Delicious, delicious breakfast. And, okay, so what did we do? Well, we had meetings. We call them workshops, but they're just gatherings. This one stands out because over 140 people, usually such an event, maybe 15 people. And it also stands out because we have men and women together. Word around the book just went viral in Za'atari. In total, over 2,000 people contributed. Women, men, boys, girls, older people, people with disabilities, people, men working in the street food and the souks, everybody. So we had to talk about what is the recipe, how should it be organized. We had many, many things to talk about. A big thing was just, recipe name. I want to call out a couple of things here because you might find this really funny. So of course, they wanted to put, growing up in Newfoundland, we had the Anglican Women's Church book, the United Women's Church book, these wonderful cookbooks that I still have. So it is natural, you want to put your name, but guess what? All the names in the Za'atari book, they're fake. They're fake names. So instead of saying that my name is, Karen Fisher, my name would be Devlin, because my son's name is Devlin, and means that I am mother of Devlin, right? So Muhammad's mother, she would say Muhammad. Now, of course, there are many, many thousands probably of Muhammads in the camp. Okay, and if you're a father of, you would say Abu. So Abu Muhammad, this is Muhammad's father. So it's a fake name, and this is because they're war refugees, is to protect their identity. Because war, unfortunately, lasts for decades, for generations, maybe even for centuries. Conflict is unending. Their age, there's a village in Syria, but this is also fake. They are real villages, but not the actual village that the person where they lived, and also for safety, for what we call protection for refugees. The ingredients and the amounts, that stuff is not fake. All right, you guys are supposed to laugh now. This is that was very challenging because they'd never articulated. They would say things like spice, the ingredients maybe the size of a chicken head. You get where I'm going with this. This is why it took us 6 years getting off. How to make the book, make the recipe, why it is good for you, and why they love this recipe. Why this is a recipe they wanted to share with the people of Toronto and across all of Canada. And this is inside Zaatari kitchen. You can see beautiful table of contents. This is a picture of a bride. Up here on the top, we have the Jane Eyre Book Club, right? We had the Jonathan Swift Club. One copy, we'd have to make photocopies of the pages, And so the rest of the book is like a day in the life to follow the food. But it's also got to do with the year in Za'atari. So first, of course, welcome coffee, breakfast. You go on a bicycle ride to burn off all those calories with the boys. You meet girls and you get their recipes. When I say girl, I mean teenager. Then, it's you meet women, and then it's time for lunch. After lunch, we move into Ramadan. And each chapter has a beautiful introduction to what it's about, and you get all the recipes for the section. So just telling more, like, here are stages of how we went about doing the book, the challenges of food photography. We thought it was tough. Okay, we need a literary agent so we can get a publisher. We do this, and then we say, we have to do absolutely sublime, beautiful food photography. We have to have a food stylist, many things we had to do. I'll show you a couple of photos now about cooking in the camp, because this is what I found mesmerizing. I spent a lot of time co-cooking, taking on my phone and video and things. I just love this. This is called kippa, and the shell has to be so thin, and then it's stuffed with this really, really yummy meat mixture that might have like pomegranate seeds and nuts and stuff in it, and different ways of cooking them. Then I said, they had to talk about what they were making, to be specific. And just to give you a sense of Islam, she's making a very special sauce here from dried yogurt. And as you make this sauce, because this is a beautiful dish you might serve at weddings or, big family gathering, you have to say the Shahada, which is, the testament to Allah that He's the one and only God, and that the Prophet Muhammad is His final messenger. And this is what you say, we say all the time, it's in the call to prayer for Islam, but also if you're a revert, if you become a Muslim, you say the Shahada. But we also say when we're cooking, because this is what gives it the good taste. Right? This is a picture of an original page, handwritten. And this is a picture of what the barbecue looks like. I can smell it, trust me. I see the pictures and I gain, more weight. This is a cooking contest that we had along the way, the Za'atari Best Chef. And we had a double winner, magluba, which means upside down. Basbousa cream is such a yummy, yummy sweet. Reminds me of some of the bars that we would do back in Newfoundland with the layers and the yummy middle inside. And the judges got into a fight, so we had, two winners. Yeah, fruits, all right, same everywhere. Talking about, after all the photographs were chosen and stuff, Mohammed and I had to go through the camp. And it was very important, because they're war refugees, that everybody know where their photograph is going to be, and that they give consent for this. So there's a lot of protection and ethics involved to doing this kind of book. This is just some shots from the camp. People we had to track down. Imagine you see this group of kids. This is my photo. You see these kids 5 years ago. You have to find them now. Just imagine what that was like for us. The boy was the goat herder. This is a family here. Try and find everyone. This is why our book is so special, because it's from the ground up, 100% Za'atari. 2,000 people. All of the royalties from our book, they return to the people of Za'atari, and they will decide themselves how they want to use this money to support the community going into the future. But we're about supporting Indigenous knowledge. It's about countering the effects of what we call domicide, the destruction of your home, of your culture, and everything because of war. Oh, that's a sweet, by the way. Some of the challenges that we had, these things I've already kind of mentioned, but just look at this scene from Za'atari. Yes, we're in the desert, but it's totally biblical in the winter when it can rain. And we get these floods. Some other nice photographs from the Za'atari camp. Here's, in the mosque doing the call to prayer that I mentioned, a woman cooking, other women. This building here on the right, this is an old kitchen. These were called communal kitchens, no electricity. And here on the bottom, I love this. These are scenes from weddings. And this is the wedding shop here on the very far right. In the back of the wedding shop, if you were to come with me, it's a beauty salon. But no men, sorry, you guys can't come. But yes, it is just fantastic. We did a lunch in Amman, and I'll show you this. This is Mohammed, part of our team. But this, can anyone guess what this is? Wild guess. Shout it out. Any guess? It's an oven. An oven, yeah. We call it a cooker. And I'll show you this, because I tell you, the women didn't trust using the big, professional stove at the restaurant we held our lunch, because the women came from Zaatari to cook. And they hook this up to, gas, and they can churn anything out of this oven that would just make you cry. It is so delicious. There's no temperature gauge, there's nothing, but they make this metal box work. And then we brought the cooker with us. We should all be carrying a cooker with us, a cooker. This is preparing for our lunch. These are pictures not in the book. This is preparing for the book launch in Za'atari camp, 250 people. The ambassador of Canada, ambassador of Ireland, the EU ambassador, everybody came. About 12 women, Mohammed, 12 women. They cooked all night long preparing dishes. Here's the women working on a yummy dish called shish barak. This is something that we're doing now. We're creating new products that are like outcome of the book that lean into the Syrian heritage. Christmas stockings. Isn't this great? Syrians in Zaatari making Christmas stockings, Christmas hats. But this is all from fabric from Aleppo that we're using. And we're also making these special character dolls. The doll, you turn it upside down, and there's another character underneath it. We call them magluba dolls because magluba is one of the most famous dishes in Syria and Palestine, and it's because you have the meat on the bottom and you flip it upside down, and then the meat comes up on the top. So this is why we call them magluba dolls. So that's it. I want to thank everyone and looking forward to your questions. And I have to tell you, we would not be standing here tonight. We would not have this beautiful book to share with you in the world if it was not for the people of Canada and the Canadian government. They supported us with the food photography and with our launches, and this book would not have happened. And also our publisher is Canadian, our literary agent in Toronto, and you're all here tonight to show your love. So just thank you to everyone. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I want to start by saying I only read cookbooks. I know, it's embarrassing. My wife makes fun of me. She says, why don't you read a novel? I say, I like cookbooks. I'm an avid collector of cookbooks. And so when I got invited to join you today, I said, absolutely. I was reading this book on a plane 2 days ago and tearing up. And I said, it's the first cookbook that's brought me to tears. The stewardess was confused. Anyway. And I'll say that, Karen, I have to talk you up here a little bit because as a writer of a cookbook as well, it's weird to pat yourself on the back, so I'm going to go ahead and just tell you that it's almost not enough to call it a cookbook. Yes, there are beautiful recipes. Yes, there are beautiful pictures of the recipes, almost one for every recipe, I believe, which is amazing. But there's story after story of courage, resiliency, entrepreneurship, and I think in the Western world, when we hear about a refugee, I, anyway, had a picture of downtrodden and a bag over her shoulder and sad. And then you read these stories of courage and just, they're unbelievable. They're unbelievable. So buy the book. Anyway, it's wonderful. I want to start with both of you, Mohammed and Karen. Karen, you mentioned in the book you're probably the only person from Newfoundland ever to enter the camp.
Well, there's an exception to that, actually.
Never mind.
This is late breaking. 10 days ago, we were meeting with one of the staff from the Irish embassy. And of course, you're from Newfoundland. Everyone thinks you're Irish, right? This is funny. I go to Ireland. They think I'm from the countryside. Or they think I'm from like Dublin and I've been gone a long time. And I say, yeah, about 500 years. Anyway, I can talk about that a lot. But anyway, yeah, so he's Irish. Yeah. And we're talking about this. And he said, he was actually born in St. John's. His father had been in there for work, something like this. They didn't stay. Right. They went back to Ireland. So he came to Zaatari. Yeah. So now 2 people.
Now there's 2.
Now there are 2 of us.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if we go back to the beginning for each of you. You're both obviously from very different places, and you find yourselves in the Za'atari camp. And I'll start with you, Mohammed. We saw a picture of people entering that camp, and there was a common theme in the stories that I read. No one expected to be there for 10 years. And I wonder, what were your feelings as you entered the camp?
Yes, thank you, Shahir. And actually, I came to Jordan 2015. And I was thinking to sit there just for a month to see my sisters and go back. Then my mother hid all my papers.
His passport.
Me to go back. And really actually, it was very boring for me, and I start follow the people to see, to discover what happened. Then I went to an NGO to ask them if they have any activity, any sports. I met the manager there, and she told me, would you like to be a volunteer with us to train the kids, to teach them? So I start with them. Then I spent maybe 8 years with NGOs there,
Wow.
as a social worker.
Wow.
That time I met Karen when I was with IRD, International Relief and Development. And she suggested to me to work with her and to create this book.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't believe that first time. Yes, what is cookbook? And,
Yeah.
My mother know how to cook, and all good.
Yeah.
We are very happy. Then I start with her. Stories, recipes. Then
Yeah.
I start think, and I thought the value for this book.
Right.
Yes.
And on that topic of the value, and I'll open up to both of you, there's so many examples in the book of art, music, poetry, and yet food stood out to you, Karen. I don't think you entered the camp expecting to write a cookbook. Am I right?
No, not at all. I was there to do a project about how young people use their mobiles and the internet. But my job I was here with some other professors, and my job as an ethnographer was really to understand the life 724. Because I mentioned that the staff, the UN workers would clear out around 3:30, not there on the weekends, and the camp is so different. I mean, Mohammed, can testify much better to this. So people were keeping little diaries for me, and I gave them those Fuji Instamax cameras, with those Polaroid things. And one man had put pictures of him cooking for his family. And the caravan was very dark, and there was just he's cooking like in his undershirt too. And he had but he had such immense joy of what he was doing. And then a 15-year-old girl, she had my first recipe. And it was she wrote in English, not perfect English, you know what I mean, but it was a recipe for cake. And I was thinking there's something more going on here, because if you go into the main street, well, the little shops and the street food, it's called the Champs-Élysées instead of Champs-Élysées, right? And I would say, where are the women? Because these shops is all men who are working there. Because if you're a woman and you're a refugee, somewhere like Zaatari, you have a very difficult life. Like I said, you don't have the Electrolux and GE appliances for everything, there's no electricity and stuff like that. And at the same time, they're churning out the most gorgeous meals. And I was following my nose, and I was thinking that we wanted to document this.
Yeah.
The role of women in the refugee experience, and the role of food, how food sustains people.
And it really is a theme in the book in terms of these different dishes being cooked and enjoyed as a way of connecting back to homeland and different places. And again, more so than music, poetry, etc. I found that so fascinating.
Yeah, there's a couple of recipes that they're mentioned in the book, but I didn't include them. But these are very, very old recipes, which you probably know, like from Egypt, Bedouin culture, where there's something called zarb. And zarb, you dig a hole in the sand, like a tunnel, and then you have, fancy ways, if you have like metal baskets, and they're in a frame. And then in each basket, you put a different type of food. So one will have vegetables, another one will have like potatoes, or rice, something like this. And on the very top, you might have the meat.
Right.
So that the juices, the fat from the meat goes down over everything. Anyway, you go off and do your thing for the day. Maybe you're herding camels or whatever you have going.
Sure.
And then you come back later and you push back the sand and you pull it all up. I mean, there's a lid on the top. You pull it up and there's dinner for everyone. Another really, I've had zarb, trust me, it's really good. But they used to make this in the early days of Zaatari. And then, the camp evolved. But also there's a bread that's called arboud, which should be made and just thrown into the fire, and you toss it around with a stick. So it's really, really well covered with ash. Do you know this recipe?
Cool, I don't.
Arboud. So, you're making the Bedouin, the Arabic coffee, and you're playing musical instruments. You're having a great old time, and you're poking the bread. And then you tap it with a stick like you would. You know, if you're making any bread, it's that, you know, hollow on the bottom. Just, you know, and you take it out and you dust off all the sand and the ash from it, and you have your bread. So this was a very old recipe that also in the early days of Zaatari, they're cooking over an open fire. Well, I didn't put that in the book because it's a bit different for where
Next
we are
one.
now.
The sequel.
Oh, yeah, the sequel.
Yeah.
But we did put in the recipe for ras haruf.
Yes.
Do you want to explain what ras haruf
Oh, well, hold
is?
on. But first, I got to ask you this
Okay.
one because this was the recipe that in your introduction you said was your favorite or one of your favorites. And then when I went to it, Mohammed just said to me earlier when I met him, said, "That's your mom. This is your mom." Actually, can you tell us about this recipe?
Tell us about your mom.
Okay, this is, we call it, okay, Karen, I know.
Ragaga.
Argaga. It's different layers.
Yeah.
The first one dough, then we will put chicken with the onion, with the spicy, then we will put also dough, then it's up to you which how many layers do you want.
Right.
Yes. And we do it to celebrate any person who visit us.
Beautiful.
Yes.
And crispy kind of layers in between. There was a recipe in here, and there are a couple actually that I've never heard of before. We talked about bouza, which was this kind of
Bouza.
stretchy kind of dessert, which I've never heard
It's
of.
ice cream, Syrian ice
It
cream.
looks like ice cream, but
It
it's
is.
not quite. It's
Syrian ice cream.
And it says in the description of the recipe, the person who contributed the recipe says, "Close your eyes as you're stretching it out, and you're back in Damascus."
Yes.
And I thought that was so amazing. And I have to ask you, what recipes, if you could close your eyes and smell it and taste it, transport you back home?
للزاقيات.
What page?
Okay.
Tell us about it.
It's a Horanian sweets.
Okay.
No one in Syria can do it or know how to do it. Just our region, yes.
Just your
And-
region.
Yes, and I think Karen tasted a lot.
Yeah.
It's very delicious, and if I taste it now, I will go back to my mother.
Wow.
Direct. Yes.
And that is the essence of the whole book, really. How food can do that and transport people. Do you agree? Is there another common theme, Karen, you found from the people in the camp?
Well, just two. This is a story. But, you know, Newfoundland, you know, we cook it, you know, rabbits, turtles, seals, you know, hands up if you're a bit familiar with Newfoundland cuisine and everything. So you know where I'm going with this. Lots of things. My father was a hunter and a fisherman, okay? There's a recipe in there for ras haruf, which is roasted sheep heads. And it's with this, oh my God, the most amazing garlicky sauce. You should make it just with the sauce. And I was telling our literary agent, you know, he was preparing the pitch for the book. And I said, you got to put this recipe in. And this is even before, you know, we had food photography done. And he said, Karen, we're going to leave that one out for now. We'll leave that out, and after we get the right publisher. And I said, yeah, it's coming back. So this is the ras haruf. And we did the food photography on this one twice, because the first time it wasn't quite right. And this is kind of what I was going to get at, is that the Syrians, like in Zaatari, they are the ultimate foodies, not just the world's most exclusive restaurant, but I have been with these people. He's blushing. We go, because it's true. We go to, say, the capital, Amman, anywhere, and I call it their hummus radar. We're there like for breakfast, and they see the hummus, and they just keep going, because they know that it's not going to be as perfect as what you would have in Zaatari camp. Right? They're total food snobs. Same with like falafel. So I've become a food snob for Arab food too, of course, because they spoiled me so much. Yeah, see?
It's good-looking
That's
hummus.
the hummus. It's the hummus. But for the ras haruf, the first time they were looking at the photograph, and they were saying, it said, no, these sheep heads are not. The meat was falling off the bone too much, I think is, you should maybe explain this better than me. So I had to redo it, and of course everybody was happy to recook the sheep heads. But this recipe is actually from you, right? This is one of your favorite recipes. So I'm talking, you know, with Mohammed, and I think maybe I was in Amman. Anyway, I was saying, how do you do this? And I said, how many sheep heads do you need? And he was just like his mother, right? And that she would say, what's the word your mother uses for some?
Gutma.
Huh?
It's me, Gutma.
Good mom.
All the time I was suffering with my mother when I asked her about any spicy, how much we need. She told me Gutma. Gutma, it's a word in Horanian accent. you should translate it from Horanian to Arabic, then from Arabic to English. So Gutma, it means some.
Stop. And this is what he told me
Yeah,
about
shway.
the sheep heads, number of sheep heads you would need. And you know, you have to ask the butcher to keep the sheep heads for you and things like this. So that was a whole adventure, just
Right.
this recipe.
Unbelievable. And unique. And unique. I mean, there's a lot of unique recipes here that are just to certain regions and specific cooks and mothers, and it's really a personal touch to all the different recipes. Again, I mentioned all these stories sprinkled throughout the book. There was one young man playing soccer here, and you know everyone in this book.
Yes, I know him.
And this one caught my attention because it says the hero. I said, whoa, what's about this guy?
Yes.
He says, I hardly remember Dara in Syria except feeling we were happy and safe. I was 7 when the war started, when my father brought us to Jordan in November 2012. I'm now 17 and live with my parents. And that stayed with me. I was like, wow, he was 7 and now he's 17. All he remembers is a feeling. And as I kept reading through the book, 80 babies a week are born in this camp. 20% of the population are under the age of 4. So how important is it through food or art, music, we have a musician in here, trying to keep the culture alive? How important is that?
I think it's very important because, you know, in Syria, the government destroyed everything there. But they cannot destroy our mind. They cannot destroy our feeling. We have the hope. We didn't give up. So through this book, we save our culture. Mm-hmm. We create a new opportunity for the women there. Maybe they will get a job through the cooking. Many people share them stories with us, so it will be as inspiring for the next generations. Mm-hmm. And a lot of Karen shared that there is a lot of kids in the camp, mm-hmm. so they didn't know a lot about our culture. So this is for them. And for me, I didn't know all the dishes inside the book. Karen told me, we need this recipe. Wow. What is it? Yes. So my mother know. For me, I didn't know that. So this is a good point for us.
Yes, for Karen, yes. Well, careful. She's taking you to Newfoundland in a few days, right?
Sorry?
You're taking him to Newfoundland in a few days, correct? Going to make him try some of those exotic foods, or?
Yes, absolutely.
Prepare yourself. You'll be okay. Well, there's other stories in the book, food-related, in terms of the master of the falafel and different bakeries that opened. Food didn't just play a role of taking people back to their homeland. It gave them a chance to start an entrepreneurial venture. And that seems to be a common theme as well, in terms of, you know, people really had to get creative and start new ideas and build this camp into a full-blown economy and society, and a vibrant one at that. And talk to us about the role that food played in that.
Zaatari has a thriving microeconomy. I want to play with you a little bit now, okay?
Me?
Yeah, a little bit, right?
It's not in my notes.
And what I mean by what I mean by this is that, there's how many countries in the Arab League? That's not my question, but there's like 20 plus, 28, something like this. And like I said, it's a very old, glittering civilization, especially, and Egypt too, of course. Yep. Now, Arabs love, it's like people everywhere. This is my big takeaway, is that everywhere you go, people are the same. We are the same. We have the same things that we do, the same needs, the same emotions. We care for the same things. Everybody wants a better life for their children. We also, all around the world, we also love to argue about food. I think that's pretty universal too. So in the Arab world, you get talking to people, who are the best cooks? Who are the best cooks? And they'll say the Lebanese. You agree? The Lebanese are up there?
They're up there.
They're up there.
They're up there.
Okay. And then someone else is going to say, it's Palestine. The Palestinians are really good. Yes?
I agree.
Okay, all right, good with that one. And
He's
then
saying no.
what I find, and then
This is
what
a trick
I
question.
but then what I find, right, and this is also, based on my years, 10 years now in the Middle East, all over it. The room will go, the conversation will get quiet for a sec, and then they'll say, Syria. Syrians are the best cooks.
Right.
You agree with this?
I do now.
You know, but that was a big takeaway. And like even all across Jordan, people would know about the food in Zaatari camp. I had an opportunity, and you know, this is something. Like I said, this is just today. This was a huge dream for us. This was like a pipeline dream, but we want to go bigger. I mean, I'd love to bring all the people of Zaatari to Canada. We have lots of space, right? There's, you know, we have no problem with the space, you know, in Canada. They contribute so much, and we just want to, you know, set up futures and like livelihoods, different kinds of entrepreneurship activities, and so many things.
Yeah.
But we're starting this in Jordan, and we're, you know, in Zaatari, and trying to bring, you know, all of it to the world, the culture in different ways,
Yeah.
starting with the food.
And you've done a masterful job at it. We're going to open up the floor to questions, but before we do,
Yes.
one last question. This was a passage that really stayed with me as well. Again, all these stories littered throughout the book. And you know this artist. What was her name again?
Malak Abul Khair.
She wrote, and sorry, this was your writing, and it's beautiful writing. When my family decided to leave Syria, I was shocked. They promised we'd return home in 2 months, and my father stayed behind as proof. I said goodbye to my house. I kissed the walls and the garden earth. I left my new sweater, brown and white stripes, ready for my return. And she goes on to her story. And what struck me about that is, similar to you, no one really expected to stay for a decade. And now that you have, and now that you're here in Canada, I was left with a question for you, Mohammed, and saying, if I could grant you a wish, and you could pick anything to build a life in Canada with your family, to return home to Syria, to go back to Zaatari, what would you wish for?
I wish to go back to Syria, but with the new situation. Just that.
Right. The home you remember.